Imagine this, things are going beautifully, you're laughing together, the connection feels effortless, and then suddenly something shifts. He's not calling as much, his replies are shorter, his energy feels different. It's almost like the warmth that was there yesterday has been replaced with silence today. And in that silence, your mind starts racing. You replay every moment, every conversation, every tiny detail, wondering if you did something wrong. That pit in your stomach grows, and without even realizing it, you begin to interpret his distance as rejection. It feels personal, like maybe you weren't enough, maybe you were too much, or maybe you said the wrong thing. That's the emotional shock of distance, one of the most universal experiences women go through in relationships. The hardest part about this moment is not the silence itself, but the meaning we attach to it. You see, when someone we care about suddenly steps back, it's like our instincts are triggered to search for answers. We're wired to crave certainty, and when it's missing, the brain fills in the blanks with the worst possible scenarios. He's lost interest. He's talking to someone else. He's pulling away because he realized he doesn't actually want me. These thoughts come flooding in, and they feel so real that they begin to shape how we act. The irony is that the story we tell ourselves often creates more damage than the actual space he's taking. Think about it. You could be in the most beautiful connection, but the moment he steps back, your energy shifts. You go from being relaxed, playful, and confident to tense, overthinking, and waiting for the next sign of reassurance. Suddenly, your happiness feels tied to his behavior, and that dependence makes the situation even more painful. That's why the shock feels so big. It isn't just about his silence. It's about the way it exposes your fears of abandonment, of not being valued, of being forgotten. Now, here's the part most people miss. This moment isn't rare. It's not even unusual. Every woman who has opened her heart will face this silent test at some point. And knowing that doesn't make it hurt less, but it does make it less of a mystery. Because when you expect the test, you're less likely to panic when it arrives. The emotional shock is real, but it becomes manageable when you recognize it for what it is, a shift in rhythm, not necessarily a sign of the end. What's important to understand is that the initial pullback is often less about you and more about the natural flow of connection. Relationships are not a straight line, they move like waves. There are moments of closeness where everything feels intoxicating and moments of space where one or both people pull back to breathe, reflect, or regain balance. If you mistake the natural ebb for rejection, you'll sabotage the flow before it has the chance to stabilize. But if you can stay steady in the shock, you allow the wave to come back. So the real challenge isn't how to prevent him from pulling away, but how you manage yourself when he does. Because it's not the silence that breaks many women, it's the reaction to the silence. The panic, the chasing, the overcompensation. And that all starts with the way the shock hits you in the very beginning. If you can remind yourself in that moment that distance is part of the process, you can hold on to your sense of worth instead of giving it away. The emotional shock of distance is always going to sting, but it doesn't have to control you. It's the point where fear tries to hijack love, where insecurity tries to rewrite the story. But the truth is, the distance is not always a reflection of your value. It's just a moment in the dance of connection. And when you understand that the silence loses its power to make you doubt yourself, when a man begins to pull away, the instinctive thought that flashes through your mind is, what did I do wrong? That single question carries with it a storm of self-doubt, and before long, you're scanning every conversation for flaws, every moment together for signs you missed. But here's the truth that rarely gets said: his distance is not always about you. In fact, more often than not, it's about something happening within him. Something that may have very little to do with your actions or your worth. Think of it this way: just like women, men have their own ways of processing emotions, stress, and vulnerability. For many men, Pulling back is less about rejection and more about recalibration. It's how they cope when they feel overwhelmed, pressured, or uncertain. Instead of moving closer when they're under strain, their instinct is to create space. It's not because the connection is meaningless, but because they need distance to figure themselves out. And if you mistake that need for space as a sign that you're unwanted, you create a story that was never there to begin with. Sometimes a man steps back because he's scared of the very feelings he has for you. Connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability exposes fears. Fear of being hurt, fear of losing independence, fear of not being enough. For many men, the deeper their feelings grow, the stronger the temptation to retreat, not because they want to leave, but because they need to make sense of what they're experiencing. It's a defense mechanism, a pause to regain control over emotions that feel too big, too fast. Other times, the pullback has nothing to do with the relationship at all. Maybe he's dealing with work stress, financial pressure, or personal issues he doesn't know how to share. In those moments, the retreat isn't a reflection of you, but of his own internal battles. He might not even have the language to explain what's happening, so instead of opening up, he shuts down. And while his silence feels like rejection, it may simply be his way of coping with challenges he doesn't yet know how to express. The danger in these moments is assuming his behavior must be a direct mirror of your value. When he becomes distant, it's easy to think, if I were enough, he wouldn't pull away. But human behavior is far more complex than that. His silence may be the product of fear, stress, or habit, and if you interpret it as a personal flaw in yourself, you only end up hurting yourself twice, once from his distance and once from your own self-blame. Here's what's crucial to understand. People show love and connection in different rhythms. Some people draw closer when life gets hard, while others step back. Neither response automatically means love is gone. The mistake is believing that his withdrawal must mean loss of interest, when in reality it could mean he's simply resetting, regrouping, or figuring out his next step. That's why the most powerful thing you can do in this situation is to resist the urge to take immediate ownership of his distance. It's not your job to fix what may not even be broken. The moment you stop assuming it's about you, you regain your sense of calm, your sense of self, and your ability to respond with patience instead of panic. When he pulls away, it may feel like the ground has shifted under your feet, but the truth is, the story is not always as dark as your fears want to paint it. Sometimes his silence is less of a verdict and more of a pause. And when you see it that way, you free yourself from unnecessary pain. You realize that his space does not erase your value, and his pullback does not define your worth. It's just part of his journey, and how you handle it determines whether the connection has room to grow stronger. The moment you feel him pulling away, something inside you wants to act fast. You want to fix it, to close the gap, to bring him back before he slips away completely. That's the moment when many women make the biggest mistake, over chasing. It happens almost without realizing it. You text more than usual. You call just to check in. You ask questions to reassure yourself, and before you know it, the energy has shifted from mutual connection to pursuit. The irony is that in trying to bring him closer, you often end up pushing him further away. Why does this happen? Because when someone pulls back, it creates a space. And instead of allowing that space to breathe, the instinct is to fill it. But when you fill it with calls, messages, explanations, or pleas for clarity, what you're really doing is sending the message that his approval is the oxygen you need to feel safe. That's not only overwhelming for him, it's exhausting for you. You end up handing over your power, your calm, and your sense of worth in exchange for scraps of reassurance. What many people don't realize is that chasing doesn't always look like begging or crying. Sometimes it's subtle. It's sending that extra, just thinking of you. Text when you know deep down it's not about connection. It's about hoping for a quick response to ease your anxiety. It's suggesting to meet up, not because you want to, but because you're afraid he'll forget about you if you don't. It's explaining yourself over and over, trying to prove you're easy to be with, fun to be around, or worth the effort. These little actions come from a place of fear, and fear is never attractive. What happens to him in these moments is simple. He feels pressure. And pressure is the exact opposite of what makes a man want to come closer. Imagine being in his position. He's taking a step back, maybe to process something, maybe to regain balance, maybe because of reasons that have nothing to do with you. And instead of being given room, he feels someone closing in, asking for answers, demanding certainty. The natural response to pressure is not to lean in, it's to pull back further. So the very behavior meant to fix the situation ends up making it worse. This is why one of the greatest skills you can develop in love is restraint. Not the kind of restraint that ignores your needs or silences your feelings, but the kind that recognizes the difference between action that comes from fear and action that comes from strength. Fear-driven action says, I can't handle this space, so I need to close it now. Strength-driven action says, I trust myself enough to let this breathe, and I don't need to chase to prove my worth. That shift changes everything because it takes the pressure off him and returns the power to you. The mistake of over-chasing also creates another problem. It erodes your authenticity. When you're consumed with keeping him close, you stop being yourself. You laugh a little harder, agree a little faster, hide the parts of you that might scare him off. Slowly, you become more focused on being chosen than on choosing. That's not love, it's fear in disguise. And even if it keeps him around temporarily, it doesn't build the kind of connection that lasts. The truth is, real attraction is born from freedom, not force. He is far more likely to lean back in when he feels the space to choose you, not when he feels the weight of being cornered. The biggest mistake women make in this moment is forgetting that their value isn't up for negotiation. You don't have to chase someone to remind them of who you are. Your presence, your energy, and your life speak louder than any desperate action ever could. So when he pulls away, resist the urge to close the gap with frantic energy. Instead, step back into yourself. Because the woman who can stay composed in that silence is the woman who communicates without words that she knows her worth. And that's the energy that draws someone back. Not pressure, not chasing, but calm, steady self-assurance. The hardest part of someone pulling away isn't the silence itself, it's how tempted you feel to break it. Everything inside you wants to lean in, to do something, to close the space so you can feel secure again. But there's a hidden power in stillness, in choosing not to react, in holding your ground with quiet confidence. That stillness is not weakness, it's not passivity. It's the strongest and most attractive response you can give, because it shows that you value yourself enough not to panic when someone creates distance. When you stay calm in that moment, you communicate something far more powerful than words ever could, that your happiness doesn't live or die based on his behavior. You show that you're capable of being connected without being dependent. And that distinction is magnetic, because when a man realizes you don't crumble under the pressure of his silence, he sees someone who isn't desperate for validation, but instead rooted in her own value. That's the kind of presence that earns respect, not just affection. This doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It doesn't mean playing games or acting cold to manipulate him. It's about redirecting your energy back to the one thing you can always control, yourself. When he pulls away, you pull inward into the things that light you up, the activities that make you feel alive, the people who remind you of your worth. Instead of obsessing over what he's doing, you invest in what you can do for yourself. That's where your power lies. Think about the difference between two women in the same situation. One panics, floods his phone with messages, cancels her plans just in case he calls, and spends her nights replaying everything in her head. The other notices the shift, feels the sting of it, but then chooses to go to her yoga class, meet her friends, work on her goals, and live her life. Which woman do you think he's more likely to feel drawn back to? It's the one who doesn't collapse under distance. It's the one who quietly demonstrates through her actions that she has a rich, full life that doesn't stop because someone else pulled away. There's also something incredibly attractive about composure. When you're able to maintain your energy, instead of spiraling into neediness, you create a contrast. He expects you to chase, to question, to react, because that's what so many people do when they feel someone slipping away. But when you respond with grace and steadiness, you stand out. You send a silent message that says, I care about you, but I also care about myself. I'm here, but I won't lose myself waiting. That balance of care and self-value is rare, and it's what makes someone want to lean back in. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't just help the relationship, it helps you. Because the truth is, not every man who pulls away will come back. But if you spend that time obsessing over him, you lose both him and yourself. If you spend that time building yourself, you might lose him, but you gain a stronger, more centered version of you. Either way, you win. That's why the power of stillness isn't just about attracting him back. It's about protecting your own heart in the process. So when the silence comes, remember, you don't need to fill it. Let it exist. Let him have his space while you take yours. Trust that if the connection is real, distance won't break it. It will only test it. And if he can't meet you in that balance, then you've just learned something invaluable without losing yourself along the way. That's the true power of self-value. It's not about holding on tighter. It's about standing tall, even in the moments when someone else takes a step back. When someone you care about pulls away, it's natural to feel a void. The instinct is to rush in and fill it, but the truth is, connection isn't built by chasing, it's built by shifting the energy. Instead of pouring all your focus into where he's going, the real strength comes from where you direct your attention. Because what draws someone back is not pressure or pleading, but the magnetic pull of someone who is grounded, radiant, and engaged with life. The moment you feel distance, the most effective response isn't to close the gap, but to shift your energy back into yourself. When you do that, you don't just distract yourself from the discomfort, you elevate your value in his eyes. He sees a woman who doesn't crumble when faced with uncertainty, but instead invests in her passions, her friendships, her goals. That kind of energy is irresistible because it communicates that you are whole with or without him. And paradoxically, that very wholeness is what makes him want to return. Think about it, nobody is drawn back to someone who radiates panic. But everyone feels the pull of someone who radiates life. When he senses that you are still moving forward, still laughing, still growing, he feels the contrast between your calm steadiness and his own retreat. That contrast doesn't push him away. It makes him curious. It makes him question why he pulled back in the first place. It makes him remember the woman he was drawn to, not because she begged for his attention, but because she carried herself with energy and joy that was hers alone. Shifting the energy also means resisting the temptation to punish him for his distance. It's easy to fall into silent treatment, bitterness, or passive-aggressive remarks as a way to make him feel guilty. But guilt rarely creates closeness. What does create closeness is maintaining warmth without losing boundaries. That might look like keeping your tone light in conversation, being pleasant when you interact, but not overextending yourself. It's the balance of being kind, but not chasing, available, but not needy. That balance communicates, I still care, but I'm not collapsing just because you stepped back. Another way to shift the energy is through subtle acts of independence. Make plans without waiting for him to decide. Prioritize the hobbies and goals that matter to you. Surround yourself with people who uplift you. Not only does this keep you fulfilled, but it also reminds him that your world doesn't revolve around him. And in relationships, that reminder is powerful because when a man feels like your entire happiness depends on him, it feels heavy. But when he sees that you are capable of creating your own joy, he feels inspired to be part of it. What's important to remember is that energy is contagious. If your energy is anxious, he feels it and retreats more. If your energy is calm and vibrant, he feels drawn toward it again. That's why the best strategy in moments of distance is not to force connection, but to embody it. Show up to your life with passion and let that passion do the work of attraction. So instead of asking, how do I get him back? Ask, how do I get myself back to my best energy? Because when you are in that state, you don't have to chase. You create a space where he naturally wants to step in again. And if he doesn't, you've still gained something priceless. You've deepened your own confidence and joy. That's the beauty of shifting the energy. It's not about controlling him, it's about mastering yourself. And that mastery is what makes love stronger when it's real and sets you free when it's not. When a man pulls away, it feels like the story is slipping out of your hands. But what many people don't realize is that this moment of distance is more than silence. It's a test. It's the silent test that reveals the strength of the bond, the resilience of the connection, and the truth about whether both of you can handle space without falling apart. And the beauty of this test is that you don't need to do anything dramatic to pass it. What you need is patience, trust, and the ability to hold on to yourself when uncertainty shows up. Every relationship faces this moment sooner or later. It's the point where the initial rush of closeness meets the reality of individuality, because no matter how much two people care about each other, there will always be times when one needs space. The silent test is not about whether distance happens, it's about what happens after. Does the bond weaken when there's no constant contact? Or does it quietly strengthen because both people know how to hold their ground? That's the question the test answers. If the connection is real, distance doesn't erase it. In fact, distance often becomes the thing that deepens it. When he steps back and then chooses to return, it confirms something powerful. He's not there just out of habit or convenience. He's there because he wants to be. And that choice carries far more weight than constant proximity ever could. Sometimes, giving someone space is the very thing that allows them to realize how much they value being close to you. On the other hand, the test can reveal a truth you may not want to face but need to see. If he pulls away and never comes back, it's painful, yes, but it's also clarity. You don't waste months or years holding on to someone who isn't willing to hold on to you. The silence shows you where his priorities lie, and as hard as that is to accept, it frees you from investing in a connection that isn't mutual. Passing the silent test doesn't always mean the relationship survives. It means you survive with your dignity intact. The real strength lies in how you carry yourself through the test. If you panic, chase, or collapse, you fail yourself before you even see how he responds. But if you can hold your stillness, keep your energy alive, and resist the temptation to beg for reassurance, you prove something vital, not just to him, but to yourself. You prove that you don't need someone else's constant presence to know your own worth. And once you've proven that to yourself, you'll never settle for a connection that requires you to give it away. This silent test is also the bridge between infatuation and deeper love. Infatuation is fragile, it thrives only in closeness and reassurance, but deeper love can withstand silence, space, and even doubt. It grows stronger because it has room to breathe. When he pulls away and then returns, the connection often feels renewed, more grounded, because both of you have walked through uncertainty and chosen to stay. So when you're faced with that moment of distance, see it for what it is, not the end of the story, but a test of it. It's the universe's way of asking, can you hold on to yourself while you wait to see if he holds on to you? If the answer is yes, you win no matter what. If he comes back, the bond is real. If he doesn't, you've lost nothing but someone who wasn't ready for the love you have to give. The silent test is never easy, but it is always revealing. And once you learn how to face it with strength, you'll never again fear the silence. You'll understand that it doesn't define your value. It defines the connection. And that clarity is the gift hidden inside the space you once dreaded.